使问 and my paper topic for today is port competitiveness from user's perspective. And here's the author of the paper. And my paper is also published 10 years ago. And here's the outline of the paper. I divided them into 4 sections. The first section is the introduction, and I will explain the research process, research method, and finally make a conclusion. And before we get into our main content, we have to know what's the port status, what happened to the port now. And so the paper divided them into the 6 items. The first item, the containerization of ports. Because of the containerization, the port needs better handling efficiency, so it makes the competition between the ports more serious. And our second problem is the rapid development of shipping industry, causing China and the neighboring countries to actively develop their own ports. We all know that China plays an important role in the manufacturing, so there's a great demand for shipping goods from China to all the world. And plus, the development of shipping industry can not only help to promote the local economy and attract the foreign investment. And so, it also makes the competition between in China and their neighboring countries more intense. And the third problem, overlapping inland causes fierce port competition. And the second point, not only ports in China but also some other cities nearby striving to expand their port. So our third problem, with the city expanding their port, it caused the problem of overlap in the inland. And our fourth problem, the trend in port privatization resulting in more intense competition. Many countries now transfer the port ownership to the private company, leave it to the private management. And so it caused resulting in the competition more intense. And the above 4 problems all lead to our fifth problem. With the competition among the seaports in the region become fiercer, it is important to understand the factors which affect our port competitiveness. And finally, little attention has been paid to inland assets and the impact of inland conditions as a factor of port competitiveness. This is actually a very serious problem because, for example, if there is a delay today, and the delay cost will not only be at the port, but also some other part of the supply chain. And in response to those problems, the researchers come up with the following goals. The first one, determine the importance of factors that affect port competitiveness from perspective of users. Because users are who have actual experience with the port, so the information from them will have high reference value. And our second purpose is to determine factors from the AHP. Then they also want to weight and compare the port competitiveness of China, Hong Kong, Taiwan, and some other Asia-Pacific countries. And ultimately providing the result to the port companies so they can make a policy and enhance their performance. But what's the differences between the previous study and this paper? These are the 2 major differences, research target and the port. Let's start with the research target. In this paper, they analyze from the perspective of user, which is shipping liner, forwarder, and the shipper. But in the previous study, they only focus on one of the groups, which means they have mentioned the shipping liner or the forwarder, but they never put these 3 groups together and compare them. And our next differences is the port. They consider ports in China and the ports, Asia-Pacific ports. And in the previous study, they only consider ports in China or the ports other than China. And here are the 6 ports that they consider in this study. There's Shanghai, Singapore, Hong Kong, Shenzhen, Busan, and Kaohsiung. And the first 5 ports global ranking is in the top 5 in 2010. And they also consider Kaohsiung port in this study because in 2010, the interaction between Taiwan and China is becoming more frequently. And next, I'm going to explain the research process. So, the first section is to determine the factors from the literature reviews and the respondents from experts. Then they divided them into the 4 groups, which is shipping liner, forwarder, and the shipper. And first, let's look at the shipping liner, this part. After determining the factors, they asked these 26 people from the shipping liner to weight the factors based on their importance. And then they asked these 26 people to give a port a score based on the shipping liner's perspective. And then when we got the information from the importance weight and the port score, we can calculate them and give them a rank. And then we use the same method on the other 2 groups also. And here's the samples information. As we can see, they conduct the 2 kinds of interview. There's face-to-face interview and the telephone interview. There's 15 people in total in the face-to-face interview, and 5 from shipping liner, 6 from forwarder, and 4 from the shipper. And there's 356 people from the telephone interview, 26 from the shipping liner, 104 from the forwarder, and 126 from the shipper. And their telephone interview response rate are 23.1, 19.2, and 9.3%. And after knowing the respondents from expert and with the literature review, the researchers determined these 8 factors, including the port location, cost at port, port facility, shipping service, terminal operators, port information systems, handling connections, and custom and government regulation. And they also divide these 8 factors into 19 sub-factors. For example, we can see, let's look at number 3, the port facility. In these factors, they divided them into the container handling efficiency, and storage space, and facility reliability. And the next step, they asked these respondents from the 3 groups to weigh the factors. And let's start from, and let's see the result. This is the important weighting for the factors. And as we can see, the shipping liners consider cost at port as the most important factors. And for forwarder and shipper, they consider port location as the most important factors. Let me explain in detail. Because the reason that shipping liner consider cost at port as the most important because they are responsible for cost at port directly. And however, for forwarder and shipper, forwarder's job is to ship between the manufacturer and the port, and shipper's job is to provide goods for the shipment, so they don't have to pay for the cost at the port. And the next is to weigh, after knowing their weight, and they ask these respondents to weigh the 6 ports, and we can know their ranking. And that's from the perspective of shipping liner. And this is the port score and ranking for shipping liner. From this table, we can see in port location list factor, Shenzhen got the highest point, and in cost at port, Singapore got the highest point, and in port facility, Shenzhen also got the highest point again. And you can take a look at the rest. And this column is the importance weighting, which we already know from the previous chart. And this column is a score that was given by the shipping liner based on these 8 factors performance. And when we times the importance weighting to the points they got, we can calculate their final total score. And when we compare this score, we can see that 8.38 is the highest. So Singapore ranked number 1. And Shenzhen ranked number 2, and Shanghai ranked number 3. And the reason that Singapore is in the first place is because they perform well in cost support and the custom and government regulation. And next is from the perspective of forwarder. This is the post score and ranking for forwarder. And we can see from this table the port location, this factor, Shenzhen got the highest point, and in cost support, Shanghai got the highest point, and in port facility, Hong Kong got the highest point. And using the same method, when we times the importance weighting into the score they got, we get a final total score. And we can see that Singapore is in the first place with 7.8 points. And the following are Hong Kong, and Shenzhen is in the 3rd place. And unfortunately, our Kaohsiung port is in the last place. And the major reason that Singapore is placed number 1 is majorly because they have they perform well in the shipping service, inland connections, and the custom and government regulation, these 3 factors. And next is from the perspective of shipper. So this is the port score and ranking for shipper. And we can see from this table in port location, Shenzhen got the highest point, and in cost support, Singapore got the highest point. In port facility, Hong Kong got the highest point. And when we times the important weighting to the points they got, we get a total score, which is the highest is Shenzhen with 7.25 points. So Shenzhen is the winner. And in the 2nd place is Singapore, and Busan is in the 3rd place. And the major reason that Shenzhen is in the 1st place because they have an excellent port location, and they also perform well in inland connection. And we can see from this table, Hong Kong also got some of the highest points in these 8 factors. However, they only got the 5th place because Hong Kong did not perform well in these 2 factors, which is cost support and inland connection. However, these 2 factors are considered important factors for the shipper. And as well as Shanghai. We can see that Shanghai get the lowest point in this port location, these factors. However, for the shipper, they consider port location as the most important factors. So when they times the importance weighting to the score, they did not have a good total score. And this is my conclusion. With the research process, we distinguish our port users into shipping liner, forwarder, and the shipper. And then we investigate the factors and their importance way using the AHP. And from the result, we can see that in the shipping liner, they consider cost support as the most important factors. And for forwarder and shipper, they perceive port location as the most important. And when we compare these 6 ports together, we can see that for shipping liner and forwarder, they are more satisfied with Singapore's performance. And for the shipper, they consider Shenzhen as the highest competitive port. And thank you for listening.
Very good English. You look forward, not always at the slide. Question, just a question. You were saying, I find, of course, the Chinese would be very upset. They're so happy with Shanghai, but apparently the data doesn't show that. So that is interesting. And you said it was 2010 study, which is fine. That's a teacher's problem. You were given this, right?
Yeah.
Or you didn't choose?
No, I didn't choose.
No choose. Some get to choose and some don't. Okay. And I like that when you gave, like when you were in your first couple of slides, like number 1 and number 2, you read an item, but you didn't read it completely, but then you provided examples, which is a way it should be done. And so very good.
Thank you.
Okay. I'm so happy you are the last one.
Why?
Well, that's over 12 o'clock right now. Oh, okay. But you did a good job. You did a good job. Then I just have a short question. That's your slide page. Your slide number 5.
Oh, and yes, you put numbers on. That's good too.
Yeah, number 5. Yeah.
Number 5.
I just curious about the telephone interview and your response rate.
Yeah.
Are those two columns divided by together or multiplied together?
I think they're separate. I think what he's saying too is the face-to-face interview, apparently they talk to all those people and they have responses. But the responses on the telephones are quite low.
Quite low. So the total interview is more than about 100 people?
Yeah, I don't think did she say?
Because the response rate is 23.1, right?
That's
The people complete the telephone interview is 26.
yeah.
Is that what you mean?
Yes.
So the telephone interview must, the people that have interview by telephone is more than
More than 26.
100 people.
Well, this
Is
is
that-
the number of people,
Yeah.
Yes.
So
not the percentage. Okay.
yeah, yes, that's what I mean. That if you comes together, that means the very interview quite low. If you divide by the response rate, then you interview a lot of people. That's what I mean. So you need to clarify.
Clarify, yeah.
Yeah,
So the 26
it's
people
a,
is who has
it's-
responded.
it's very or
And
It's
that was
very-
23.1% of the total.
Yes.
okay. So
Okay, yeah, you need to make that clear.
yeah, clear. Because you see the shipper, the total number is 226.
Yeah.
Then if you divide by response rate, that means you interview thousands of people.
Yeah.
You know what?
Yes,
Yeah,
no.
then the
So that's
2000.
the question, because
So
I
it's
wrote
what-
down
it's
here,
what-
very low response rate.
No,
But
I guess they were calling. I wanted to interview, and then they called someone, but someone said, no, I wanted to answer. I guess.
But the shipper.
did they call 226 people and only 9.3 answered?
Answered, and yeah.
That's bad.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah,
That's very low.
yeah, very low.
But in practical, that's normal, okay?
That's normal.
So that means comes together. Right?
Okay.
Comes together.
Thank you.
Okay.
Good.
Good job. Okay, and
No,
I
no.
just have one question on your slide number 1. What's the problem? The first one, the containerization of ports. Can you explain these terms?
The containerization is like the container, a box, a standard box. So when you transport, you put your cargoes in the box. So and when the ports are operating, they only they they are easy to operate. And when they transfer the cargoes, they transfer the whole box, so they don't have to open the box or ship it to different
So
destinations.
means the operation of how to, the convenience
Yes,
of the
the-
operation from the cargo to container, right? Then the process
yeah,
in the port.
yes.
Previously, we have not container, use container to transport. Their port efficiency not very well, okay. But now we use the container, right? We use the container as a tool, also consider a tool, and put some the cargo into and then transport it can raise the port efficiency. Okay, we use container this as a tool for transport. This process we call containerization. Try to explain.
Right.
But I feel you do a good job. Is
You did a good job.
Be good, yeah.
I guess it's all the student. It's the slide, the word. Okay, the text is on the word is the desk. So that's the one.
Yeah.
It's picked by himself the many words. I wonder if it's okay. Understand? Try to know too much word on the side.
Slides,
You
yeah.
must explain by yourself. Okay. Can you?
Thank you.
Anyone can make a short
Oh.
conclusion about the first.
Conclusion about all nine.
Go there.